The Unraveled Melody. In the high, misty valleys of the Scottish lowlands, there was a village known for its silence. Not a quiet peace, but a deep, resonant silence, as if the very hills were holding their breath. The people of Glenavon had not sung a note in 50 years. A strange blight had stolen the music from their throats and the songs from their hearts. They communicated in whispers and signs, their lives a muted tapestry. The keeper of this silence was an old woman named Ilara. She lived in a cottage that seemed woven from the mist itself, its walls lined not with books, but with thousands of spools of thread, each a different, impossible color. She was the weaver. But she did not weave tartans or tapestries of battle. She wove sound. Ilara's loom was made of aged, dark oak and polished whalebone. When someone from the village passed a deeply felt emotion, a joy too sharp to bear, a grief too deep for words, they would bring her the memory of it. She would listen to their whispered description, her eyes closed, and then select a thread. A newborn's first sigh might be a soft silver. A soldier's unspoken farewell, a deep, bruised purple. The thread of a lost love was a faded, fragile gold. She would weave these threads into a vast, ever-growing fabric that hung in the village hall. It was their collective soul, a silent symphony of all they could not utter. To stand before it was to feel the weight of every joy and sorrow the village had ever known. It was beautiful, but it was a monument to loss. A young man named Finn, a history teacher who had returned to the village of his birth, could not accept this. He found an old, dust-covered fiddle in his grandmother's attic. Its strings were broken, its wood cracked. The village elders shook their heads in warning, their eyes fearful. Music was a dangerous memory. But Finn was stubborn. He spent weeks painstakingly restoring the instrument. When he finally drew the bow across the new strings, the sound that came out was not a note, but a painful, discordant screech that seemed to tear at the air. The villagers covered their ears, and the colorful fabric on the wall seemed to shudder and dim. Shamed, Finn took the fiddle to Ilara. "What did I do wrong?" he asked, his voice a hushed apology. Ilara touched the instrument's wood with reverence. "You forced a memory," she whispered, her voice like the rustle of old leaves. "Music cannot be commanded. It must be remembered." She led him to her loom. "This is not a replacement for song. It is its echo. You tried to play a note, but you need to play a feeling." She showed him a specific thread in the tapestry, a vibrant, courageous green. "This was woven the day your grandfather saved a child from a swollen river. That is the sound of bravery. Play that." Finn looked from the thread to his fiddle, bewildered. "How does one play a color? A feeling?" He closed his eyes and tried not to think of notes. He thought of his grandfather's story, the cold water, the fierce current, the determined strokes toward the bank. He let the bow drift across the strings. A single, clear, strong note filled the cottage. It was the sound of resolve. Ilara smiled, a rare, beautiful sight. Again. Note by note, feeling by feeling, Finn learned to play the tapestry. He played the silver thread of a first sigh, and a lullaby emerged. He played the golden thread of lost love, and a mournful, beautiful air drifted through the village. People began to gather outside Ilara's cottage, not in fear, but in wonder. They didn't hear a fiddle, they heard their own hearts being played back to them. One woman, hearing the melody of her own long-forgotten wedding day, began to hum. The sound was rusty and used, but it was sound. Then another voice joined, and another. The weave did not unravel. Instead, Finn's music gave it a voice. The silent symphony found its conductor. Ilara did not weave the final thread. She handed the shuttle to Finn. "The next feeling is yours to weave," she said. Finn took a deep breath, and played a new melody, one of hope and return. It was a bright, brilliant blue. And as the village sang behind him, Ilara wove it into the tapestry, the first new thread in a generation that was not made of silence, but of song.